He came to buy a horse, just a horse. But what he found in that dark stall changed everything. See, Colt McRae wasn't looking for trouble. He'd had his share and then some. But the moment he saw her, bound and bruised, eyes wide with silent fire, something shifted in him. She didn't beg, she didn't scream, just looked at him, like she already knew he was her only shot. And maybe she was his too. What came next? It ain't simple. It's got secrets, blood, heat, and choices you can't undo. So settle in. This story don't ride easy. This is The Stall Door Should Have Stayed Shut by SaddleHorn Stories. Colt McRae wasn't looking for anything but a decent horse and maybe a little quiet. He rolled up to the ranch just before sunset, the sky bleeding orange behind the clouds. Dust clung to his gray truck like a second skin, coating the side mirrors and crunching under his boots when he stepped out. Everything about the place felt off. Too quiet, too still. The kind of still that made a man's instincts twitch. He adjusted his hat and walked toward the barn, the deal fresh in his mind. Eli Rusk had texted him about a quarter horse, said it was a beast built for barrels and quick turns. Colt didn't trust Rusk, never had. The man was greasy slick, always smiling like he knew something you didn't. But Colt needed a fast horse for the spring rodeos, and this was the last decent lead within 100 miles. The barn door creaked open, and stale hay filled his nose. Rows of stalls stretched into shadow, lit only by the dying light seeping through warped wooden slats. Somewhere down the line, a horse stomped once, nervous maybe, or sensing something else. Colt paused. Then he heard it. Not a whinny, not a breath, a thud. Software repetitive, like something or someone struggling. He moved slow, hand dropping to the knife on his belt. Every step down that dusty aisle made his chest tighten. Something weren't right here. The hairs on his arms stood straight, and his boots whispered over the straw. The sound came from stall 6, locked from the outside. He unlatched it. What he saw made his blood run hot and cold all at once. A woman, mid-20s maybe. Filthy, rope wrapped tight around her wrists, her shirt torn at the shoulder, lips cracked, cheeks bruised, hair a wild mess clinging to sweat and fear. But her eyes, Lord, her eyes, fierce and unblinking, locked on his like she was measuring him right then and there. No tears, no screaming. Just a slow breath like she was bracing for whatever came next. Colt didn't say a word at first, didn't move. Because something inside him, something old and hard, cracked just a little. "You all right?" he asked, voice low and steady, like talking to a spooked colt. She didn't answer, just stared. "You hurt?" Still not a word, but her jaw tightened. Then the faintest shake of her head. Colt stepped in and pulled his pocket knife. Her gaze flicked to the blade. No flinch, just a nod. He sliced the rope. She winced as blood rushed back to her hands, but she didn't complain. She rubbed her wrists and pulled the shirt tighter over her shoulder, trying to reclaim what little dignity she had left. "You got a name?" Colt asked. "Don't matter," she said, voice hoarse. "We gotta go. Now." That's when the barn door slammed open behind them. Eli Rusk strolled in like he owned the damn world. Greasy hat, smug face, rifle slung lazy over one shoulder. "Colt," he said, grinning. "Ain't polite to snoop in a man's barn without asking." Colt stood tall, stepped in front of the girl. "You got someone tied up in here, Rusk. That's not just impolite, that's illegal." Eli's grin never faded. "She's trouble. Ran from some things she shouldn't have. I was just keeping her safe. From herself. She asked me to cut her loose." "Did she now?" Eli tilted his head toward her. "That true sweetheart?" She didn't speak, just stared Eli down like she could set him on fire with her eyes. Colt felt the tension coil in the air like a snake. His hands itched for his sidearm, but he kept them still. Not yet. "I ain't leaving her here," Colt said flatly. Eli's smile twisted. "Then I guess you're taking something that don't belong to you." Colt stepped forward toe-to-toe with the man. "You want to stop me, Eli? You better think hard about how fast you can raise that rifle." Oh. For a long second, nothing moved. Then Eli shrugged. "Ain't worth the bullet. Take her. She'll be crawling back soon enough." Colt didn't look back, just nodded once at the girl. "Come on." She followed, silent, shoulders tense. But when they hit the gravel and the barn faded behind them, she turned her face to him, lips parted like she was about to speak. Colt beat her to it. "I don't need the story. Not now." She nodded. "Good, 'cause I ain't ready to tell it." They climbed into his gray truck. As the engine growled to life and the last of the sun dipped below the ridge, Colt realized he hadn't just picked up a stranger. He'd kicked open a door that should have stayed shut. And there wasn't any closing it now. The sun was gone by the time Colt's gray truck rumbled out onto the back road, kicking up a trail of dirt that swirled in the fading red behind them. He glanced at the woman in the passenger seat, arms crossed tight, jaw clenched like stone, eyes locked forward but not really seeing anything, like her body was there, but her mind was still stuck in that stall. Colt didn't press her. He figured whatever she'd been through, it didn't need him poking at it right now. Truth be told, he didn't know what the hell he'd just stepped into. He'd come to buy a horse. Now he had a woman sitting beside him who looked like she hadn't slept in days and didn't want to be saved. And damn if she wasn't still beautiful in the middle of all that pain. They rode in silence for a while, just the hum of tires and the creak of his old suspension filling the cab, the kind of silence that felt heavy, not peaceful. "You hungry?" Colt asked finally, voice low. She nodded, still not looking his way. "I got stew back at the house. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and real." Another nod. That was something at least. Colt's ranch sat tucked between two dry hills, not much to it, just a weather-beaten house, a few barns, and a hell of a view of the stars when the clouds kept to themselves. He parked close to the porch, headlights sweeping across the front of the place. She hesitated when he opened her door. That subtle kind of hesitation most folks wouldn't notice, but Colt had been around animals and people long enough to know when someone's bones were on alert. "It's just a house," he said gently. "Nothing more." She stepped out slow, bare feet hitting the gravel with a hiss of discomfort. He reached into the cab, pulled out an old pair of boots from the back. They were a size too big, but they'd do for now. "Here," he offered. "Better than cutting up your feet." She looked at them, then at him, like she was trying to figure out the catch. When she found none, she slipped them on and followed him up the steps without a word. Inside, Colt flicked on the lights. The place was clean, but lived in. Boots by the door, flannel shirts hung over a chair, a rifle leaned by the window. He moved through the kitchen, grabbed 2 bowls and a pot of leftover stew from the stove. She stood by the door like she wasn't sure she had permission to move. "You can sit," he said, nodding to the kitchen table. "Ain't a trap." "I didn't think it was," she said finally, voice rough but clear. She walked over and eased down into the chair like it might vanish beneath her. He handed her a bowl, watched her hands tremble just a little as she took the spoon. She ate slow, small bites, careful and quiet. He didn't talk, just watched the way her shoulders started to loosen, just a bit. After a while, she set the spoon down and looked up at him. First time she'd really met his gaze since the barn. You didn't ask for my name, she said. I figured you'd tell me if you wanted to. She nodded, thought for a second. It's Mara. He nodded back. Colt. I know, she said. Eli said your name before you walked in. That shut him up for a beat. If she remembered that, she'd been conscious longer than he'd thought, which meant she heard more. Maybe all of it. You got folks? He asked gently. She shook her head. Not anymore. You running from him? Dot. She looked down at the table. I'm running from a lot of things. That line hung in the air like smoke, vague, loaded. Colt didn't press. Not yet. You want to stay here a few nights, you can. I got a guest room. Ain't much, but it's warm. Ain't no one gonna tie you up again under this roof? That got her attention. Her eyes snapped to his. Not angry, not scared, just something deeper. Like she was trying to see if she could believe him. And if I leave? Dot. You walk out that door, I won't stop you. I don't own you, Mara. Another long pause. Then she said something so soft he almost missed it. You're the first man that said that to me in a long time. That night Mara showered. Took nearly an hour. Colt didn't blame her. He stayed out on the porch, drinking coffee gone cold, listening to the coyotes howl in the distance. He couldn't stop picturing her eyes, how they held pain like a dam holds water. So much behind them, just waiting for the right crack to give way. She didn't knock when she finished. Just patted down the hallway, one of his old flannels buttoned over her. It dangled past her thighs, and Colt's throat tightened when he caught a glimpse. She looked at him, standing there on the porch like a ghost lit by moonlight. Thank you, she said. Colt nodded, lips parting to say something, but nothing came out. Didn't need to. She went to bed. And he stood there another hour, wondering just what kind of fire he'd pulled into his life. Morning light cracked through the kitchen blinds, painting long slats of gold across the hardwood. The house was still, quiet, save for the steady tick of the old wall clock and the low hum of coffee brewing in the corner. Colt stood by the window, mug in hand, eyes locked on the dirt drive that ran up from the main road. He hadn't slept much, just enough to know he wasn't dreaming any of this. Mara was still here. She came around the corner slow, wearing that same oversized flannel shirt and a cautious look that hadn't left her since the stall. Hair damp from another shower, eyes still wary. She looked better, but not okay. There's a difference. I didn't mean to sleep so late, she said, voice still rough around the edges. You didn't, Colt said, not looking away from the window. Sun just beat us to it. She walked over, hugged a mug between both hands like it was the only warm thing in the world. He could feel her eyes on him. You always stare out the window like that? Only when something don't feel right. That got a flicker out of her. Maybe half a smile, maybe just a twitch. Hard to tell with someone who's been hurt too many times. You think he's going to come back? She asked. I think if he does, I'll be ready. They stood there in silence, both watching the same stretch of road, neither saying what they were really thinking. Colt didn't want to admit it, but his gut had been twisted since they got back, like a storm was crawling under his skin and waiting to break. By midday, Colt was out checking fence line, and Mara had taken to sitting on the front porch, curled up with one of his dogs, an old blue heeler named Duke who usually didn't take to strangers, but he laid his head in her lap like he'd been waiting for her all along. When Colt came back up to the house, she was still out there, staring off across the fields like she was searching for something only she could see. You ever think about going back? He asked, handing her a bottle of water. Back where? She said. wherever you're from." She paused, ran her fingers through Duke's fur. "There's nothing back there worth going to. And even if there was, I'm not the same woman who left." He didn't push, just sat down beside her, close, but not too close. The kind of space that says I'm here if you want to talk, but I ain't gonna make you. "I used to think if I ever got free, I'd take off running," she said, voice soft. "Start over, change my name, disappear." "What stopped you?" She glanced at him. "You did." That hit harder than he expected. "I don't know what this is," she said quickly, her voice picking up, more nervous now. "You, me, this place. But I feel safer here than I have in a long time, and that scares the hell out of me." "Boral." Colt looked over at her, really looked. The way the wind caught her hair, the way her eyes never stayed still for too long, like she was always expecting someone to come up behind her. He wanted to say something, to tell her she could stay, that he'd keep her safe, that maybe she didn't need to run anymore. But just then, a glint of light caught his eye out past the tree line. Something metallic. Too far off for a reflection off rock. Too still for a passing car. Colt stood, his entire body going quiet, like a hunting dog catching a scent. "What is it?" Mara asked, already standing too. "Stay here," he said, walking toward the truck. "Inside. Lock the door." Colt. "Now, Mara." She didn't argue this time. Colt took the rifle from the rack behind the truck seat and moved along the edge of the property, eyes locked on that flash of light. As he got closer, he slowed to a crawl, staying low along the brush line. The world narrowed, just his boots on the dirt, the thrum of his heart, and the weight of the trigger under his finger. Mo. He found the tracks first, deep tire marks in the mud, not from last night, fresh, too fresh. Then he saw it, a trail cam, new, unweathered, hidden in a low pine, just past the fence. Someone was watching them. Colt yanked it down, checked it over. No branding, no ID, just a camera, aimed right at his house. He walked back slower than he left, more than just worry in his bones now. It was confirmation. Whoever Mara ran from, they weren't done. Whoa. That night, Mara was quiet again, sat by the window, watching the dark like it owed her something. Colt stood in the kitchen doorway, watching her in turn. "They found me, didn't they?" she asked. "Not yet," Colt said. "But they're trying." Mara hugged her knees. "Then I'll go. I won't drag you into this." "You didn't drag me into anything," he said. "I opened that damn stall door. This is my mess now, too." She looked at him, like she couldn't believe anyone would say that. Her eyes shimmered, and for the first time since he met her, he saw the fear underneath the steel. And still, she was beautiful. But he didn't touch her. Didn't kiss her. Because now wasn't the time for want. Now was the time for grit. The next morning came in heavy. Gray skies stretched across the horizon like a warning, the kind that didn't rumble yet but whispered, "Something's coming," the kind that makes even the wind feel cautious. Colt stood out by the barn, pitchfork in hand, pretending to shovel hay but mostly thinking. The camera, the tracks, the way Mara kept glancing over her shoulder even when no one was there, it was getting under his skin, and not just 'cause he didn't like being watched. Because whoever put that camera there wasn't finished. And Mara, she was still holding back. He found her in the tack room, going through an old box of flannel shirts he'd offered up the night before. She looked over her shoulder when he stepped in, not startled, but guarded, always guarded. "You got a thing for plaid?" he asked. Her lips twitched. "Only if it doesn't smell like mold and regret." Colt smirked, but his eyes stayed serious. "We need to talk." She let out a slow breath and set the shirt down. "I figured." They sat across from each other on 2 hay bales. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it was tight, like the air itself was bracing. "You said you were running," Colt began. "That Eli had you tied up because you tried to leave him." Mara nodded. "That's true. But it ain't the whole story, is it?" She hesitated, long enough that the wind picked up outside and rattled the windows. Then she said it. "I used to help him." Colt's jaw tightened. He didn't move, didn't breathe. "Not like that," she added fast. "I didn't know what he was into at first. Thought he was just buying and selling horses like any other rancher with too much debt and too little scruples. But over time, things got darker." Colt leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Define darker." She stared at her hands. He was running women, moving them through ranch land, using auctions and stockyards to launder money. I kept the books, filed fake tax records. I didn't ask questions I should have asked. And when you did?" "I confronted him. Said I wanted out. Told him I was going to go to the sheriff's." Colt's voice dropped low. "And he tied you up instead?" She nodded. "I tried to run twice. First time I made it as far as Amarillo before one of his guys dragged me back. Second time." She swallowed hard. "You found me before I found a third try." Colt looked at her. Really looked. Saw the mix of shame and fire sitting just beneath her skin. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She was owning it, even if it killed her to do it. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" She met his eyes then, steady, raw. "Because I didn't want you to think I was one of them." He shook his head. "You ain't. You don't know that. I know you walked out of that stall with your head up. I know you're still here when it'd be easier to disappear. And I know you're scared, but still talking to me." She exhaled, and for the first time, her shoulders dropped just a little. Then something shifted. A different kind of silence crept in, not one born of fear, but of closeness. Colt's eyes fell to her lips. Mara noticed. Her breath hitched. But she didn't move. And neither did he. Not yet. Later that afternoon, Mara helped Colt fix the fence line. She wasn't dressed for ranch work, wearing jeans a size too big and sleeves rolled to her elbows, but she moved with purpose, like she needed to feel useful, like she needed to do something. Colt watched her drive in a fence post, muscles tensing under sweat and dirt, her hair stuck to her neck. She glanced over at him and caught his stare. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," Colt said. "Just, you don't look like someone who's scared." "That's because I am," she said, "but I've learned how to wear it better." Colt stepped closer than he needed to, close enough to feel the heat coming off her skin. "You always carry your fear like a badge?" "Hey." She tilted her head. "Only when I think it might matter to someone." Their eyes met again. The tension was thick now. Not just emotional, but physical, magnetic. The kind that made your chest tighten and your hands ache to reach out. But Colt didn't touch her. And Mara didn't ask him to. That night, the rain finally came. Hard. It slammed against the windows like fists. Thunder cracked over the hills and rolled through the house like distant gunfire. Mara stood by the living room window watching it all. Colt was behind her, shirt off, towel around his neck, drying off from bringing the horses in. She turned around slowly. Stopped when she saw him. He froze too. Just for a second. Then he tossed the towel on the chair and walked over to the couch. She didn't say anything. Didn't sit beside him either. She stood there, like she didn't know if stepping forward meant safety or surrender. And Colt, he stayed where he was. Because if she was going to cross that line, it had to be her choice. Even if every nerve in his body was screaming to reach out and close the space between them. Morning hit soft and gray, like the sky hadn't quite made up its mind. The rain had passed, but the air still carried that heavy, damp kind of quiet. Colt stepped out onto the porch with a thermos of coffee and a head full of thoughts he hadn't sorted out yet. Inside, he could hear Mara moving, bare feet on hardwood, a cabinet creaking, the faint clang of a mug. She was making herself at home, in all the little ways that mattered, and that scared him a bit more than he liked admitting. Because the more normal it felt, the harder it'd be to let go. She joined him a few minutes later, wrapped in one of his old denim jackets. The sleeves swallowed her hands and her hair was still a little messy from sleep. She didn't say anything at first, just leaned against the railing, sipping her coffee like she'd stood in that spot 100 times before. "I meant to tell you something last night," she said finally. Colt turned to her, quiet, waiting. Mara kept her eyes on the fields. "When I first saw you, back in that stall, I thought you were another one of his." "Vol..." Colt tensed. "Eli's?" She nodded. "They don't always come loud. Sometimes they show up polite. Say they're there to help or talk sense. And then they shut the door." Colt's jaw tightened. "That what you thought I'd do?" "Only for a second," she said. "Then you cut the rope." He looked at her, really looked. The sun lit the edges of her face just right, making her eyes softer, her mouth gentler. But the tension still lived in her shoulders. "You got a lot of ghosts, don't you?" he said. She smirked, sad and tired. "Yeah, and they don't like to stay buried." Later that day, Colt took her out riding. He figured maybe getting her on a horse would loosen up some of that weight she carried. They saddled 2 of his quarter horses, Colt's usual gelding, Buck, and a mare named Penny for Mara. She was unsure at first, but as soon as her boots hit the stirrups, something shifted. She rode like she'd done it her whole life, loose in the hips, hands gentle, eyes focused. Colt watched her from the corner of his eye as they moved along the ridge. The wind lifted her hair, her cheeks pink with sun, lips parted just slightly as she breathed in the open air. "You lied," he said. She glanced at him. "About what?" "You said you weren't the same woman anymore." He gave her a long look. "But I think that girl's still in there. She just forgot how to show her teeth." She smiled at that. A real one this time. "You got a way of saying things, Colt." "I just call 'em like I see 'em." They stopped at a bluff overlooking the valley. Wildflowers had started blooming early, painting the hill in soft colors. Mara dismounted first, walking a few steps away, arms crossed against the breeze. Colt followed, hands in his pockets, eyes on her back. "Tell me why you're really still here," he said. "You could have run. You've had plenty of chances." She turned slow, the wind playing in her hair. "I don't know. Maybe I'm tired of running. Or maybe you're waiting for the next thing to break." She didn't deny it. Colt stepped closer. The space between them shrunk to a breath. "I ain't here to break you, Mara." She looked up at him, eyes glossy but fierce. "I don't need saving." "I didn't say you did." The moment hung there, taut like barbed wire. Their faces inches apart, hearts pounding loud enough to drown out the wind. Mara's gaze dropped to his lips. Then she stepped back. Just one step, but enough to kill the charge. I can't, she said softly. Not yet. Colt nodded once. Slow, measured. All right. That night, Mara cooked. It wasn't fancy, just skillet beans, cornbread, and roasted peppers, but Colt swore it was the best damn thing he'd tasted in months. She moved through the kitchen with ease, humming some old tune he didn't recognize. He sat at the table, nursing a beer, watching her like a man trying not to admit he was falling. And Lord help him, he was. After dinner, they sat on the couch, shoulders touching, but nothing more. Mara tucked her legs under herself, flipping through one of Colt's old ranch catalogs, pretending to be interested in feed prices. Colt leaned back, trying to focus on the news, but not really hearing a word of it. When she laughed, soft and sudden, it surprised them both. "What's funny?" he asked. She held up the page. "You circled a portable chicken coop and wrote someday next to it." Nee, Colt chuckled. "What can I say? Man's gotta have dreams." Mara looked over at him. That same look from the barn, from the porch, from the bluff. Only this time, it wasn't guarded. It was open. And for a second, Colt thought maybe she'd lean in. Maybe they'd finally break that line between want and need. But then she whispered, "Don't fall for me, Colt." And he answered, just as quiet, "Too late." Colt didn't sleep that night. He laid in bed with one arm flung over his eyes, heart thudding like boot steps on a barn floor. Across the hall, he could hear her soft footsteps, once, twice, then silence again, like she was pacing the room, or trying to decide if she should leave. When morning finally dragged its way in, thick with haze and heat, Colt already had the coffee on and the shotgun out, just in case. Because something was coming. He could feel it. And he wasn't sure if it was out there, or already in his house. Mara walked in wearing jeans that finally fit and one of Colt's plain black t-shirts. Her hair was tied up in a knot, face clear but tired. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. He slid a mug across the counter. "Didn't hear you sleep." "I didn't." They both sipped in silence. She leaned on the counter. He leaned on the stove. Neither of them really breathing. "You okay?" Colt asked. She nodded. He tilted his head. "You sure?" Her lip twitched, almost a laugh, almost. "You ever lie because the truth would burn too much?" "Every day," Colt said. She stared down into her coffee. "Then you'll understand what I'm about to say." They sat at the table, same spot as before. Only this time, the air wasn't heavy with tension. It was loaded with truth, the kind that hurt. "I told you I worked his books," she began. "Helped Eli launder money." "Yeah," Colt said. "You said you didn't know what it was for." "I did." Colt's eyes hardened. Mara looked up, tears pooling but not falling. "Not at first, but eventually, yeah, I knew." She wiped at her face with the back of her hand, ashamed. "He told me it was just girls trying to pay off their debts, runaways, drug addicts. Said he gave them work, food, a roof. I believed him. Or maybe I just wanted to believe him, because believing the other thing..." She swallowed. "That made me guilty." "Yee." Colt didn't move, didn't blink, just sat still, like the room might crack around him. "I stayed for almost a year after I found out," she said. He stood, pushed back from the table, slow and stiff. "Why?" His voice was quiet but sharp. "Why the hell would you stay with a man like that?" "Because I thought maybe if I kept the books clean, they wouldn't get hurt worse." "That's not how that works, Mara." "Oh." I know that now." Her voice rose, finally cracking. "But back then I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have anyone. And Eli, he made sure of that." Colt turned his back to her. His hands were clenched so tight his knuckles showed white. She couldn't see his face, but she could feel the distance grow like a canyon between them. "I should have told you," she said, quieter now. "But I thought if I did, you'd throw me out." He turned back around, eyes burning. "I let you into my house, my life. I protected you, and all this time, you were hiding the worst part of the story." Mara stood now too, "Because I didn't think I deserved to be saved." That stopped him. Cold. "I didn't come here looking for a white knight, Colt. I came here because I didn't know where else to go, and then you." Her voice cracked. "You made it feel like maybe I wasn't broken beyond fixing." They stared at each other across the small kitchen table, years of pain colliding in one silent breath. "I ain't asking you to forgive me," she said. "I just needed you to know." Colt nodded once. Just once. But it wasn't understanding. It was resignation. "I gotta get some air," he said, and he walked out the door. The afternoon passed slow, hot and dry, the kind of heat that makes tempers flare and nerves rub raw. Colt saddled Buck and rode out past the back fence. Didn't even know where he was going. He just needed to move. "Mole." Mara sat on the porch for hours, eyes fixed on the horizon. She thought about packing up, thought about slipping away in the night like a ghost. Would have been easier than this. But she didn't. Not yet. When Colt finally came back, dusk was settling in. Mara stood up, heart in her throat. "I was wrong," she said before he could even dismount. "About everything. But I'm not running this time." He looked at her long and hard. "I don't know if I can trust you," he said. "I don't know if I can trust myself," she answered. "But I'm still here." That silence again. Heavy, loaded. Then Colt looked past her, eyes narrowing. "What's that?" She turned. At the edge of the drive, headlights flicked on. A black truck. Just sitting there. Watching. Colt's blood turned to ice. "They found you," he said. Mara took a step closer to him. "Number they found us." Colt didn't hesitate. He grabbed Mara's arm and pulled her behind him, backing them both toward the house while keeping his eyes locked on the truck. The engine idled, low and steady. Whoever was inside didn't get out, didn't flash a light, didn't honk, just sat there. Watching. "Mara, inside, now," Colt said. She didn't argue, didn't freeze, just moved, quick and sure, slipping into the house as Colt yanked the shotgun off the porch hooks. He didn't aim it yet, but his finger was close, too close. He stepped down off the porch, every step slow and deliberate, like walking through a minefield. The gravel crunched under his boots. The air buzzed with tension. Then the truck peeled away, spitting dust and gravel as it tore down the road. Gone. But not for good. Inside, Mara was already pacing, arms crossed, eyes wild. "They're testing us," she said, voice shaking but focused. "Seeing how fast we react, how close they can get." Colt leaned the shotgun against the wall and took a breath that didn't help. That wasn't Eli. That wasn't his style. "No," she said, looking up. "That's one of the men who used to work the gates. Quiet guy. Name's Rudy. He always smiled. Always too long." Colt didn't like that one bit. "They're coming for you," he said. "No," Mara whispered. They're coming for you now, too. The plan came together fast. Colt had a friend down in Dry Ridge, Ray Coughlin. Used to be military, now worked as a ranch hand with a reputation for being calm under fire and hell with a rifle. Colt made the call, said he needed a favor, didn't explain. Ray just said, "I'll be there before sunup." Meanwhile, they packed, not to run, just to be ready. Colt wasn't leaving his land, not for this, not for them. But he wasn't letting Mara get taken again either. Later that night, she found him in the barn. He was sitting on a hay bale, elbows on his knees, head down like the weight of everything was finally starting to crush him. She didn't say anything, just sat beside him. After a long silence, she spoke. "Oh, I never meant to lie to you. I just didn't know how to say it without ruining the one thing that felt safe." Colt didn't look at her. "You did ruin it." She flinched. "But I get it," he added, softer now. "I've lied to people before to protect things I didn't want to lose." She blinked. "What did you lie about?" "My wife," he said. Mara's eyes widened. "Oh," Colt kept staring at the ground. "Told everyone she died in a fire. Truth is, she started it. Drunk and angry. We were fighting. I left to cool off. She lit a cigarette too close to a gas leak in the kitchen. I still hear her scream." He looked up at Mara. "I didn't save her. I ran." Mara didn't say anything. She just put her hand over his. Not to fix it, not to absolve him. Just to let him know she understood. They stayed like that a long time, until the crickets outside quieted and the wind kicked up hard. That's when they heard it. A sharp crack, like something snapping in the trees. Colt stood, fast. Mara's eyes darted. "That wasn't a branch." "Nope." He grabbed the shotgun and moved for the door. "Mara, you know this land better than anyone who's chasing you. You know where to go." She nodded. "Good, because I need you to take the back way down to the creek bed. Stay low. Wait for my signal. I'm not leaving you here." Colt grabbed her shoulders, steady and firm. "This ain't about pride. This is survival. You're the reason I'm standing here. I'm not letting them take that away now." Mara stared at him for one long beat, then nodded. And ran. Colt circled around the barn, low in the tall grass. He saw them coming. Two figures in dark jackets, moving low, one with a pistol drawn, the other with a flashlight sweeping side to side. Rudy. And some other man Colt didn't recognize. They moved toward the house, quiet, methodical. Colt aimed, waited. Then, a second flashlight beam appeared from behind the tractor shed. Ray. Clean shot, dropped Rudy fast and hard. The second man spun around, panicked. Colt fired once, a warning. The guy dropped his weapon and raised his hands. "Don't shoot. I ain't part of this. I was just told to follow." "Drop the flashlight," Colt said. He did. "Now run, and if I ever see you again, you won't get the chance next time." The man took off like hell was nipping at his boots. By the time Ray walked up, Mara was running back from the creek. She saw Rudy's body and froze. Colt stepped toward her, grabbed her hand. "It's done." "No," she whispered. "It's started." Colt looked down at Rudy, then up at the blackness surrounding his land. She was right. They weren't finished. But neither was he. Sunrise cracked wide over Colt's land like the end of a long war. Pale light spilled across the dirt drive, painting the bloodstains, the tire tracks, the boot scuffs. Signs of a fight, but no bodies left behind. Just the quiet aftermath of men who chose to stand their ground and won. Mara stood at the edge of the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching it all like it still didn't feel real. Her hair was a mess, face raw from wind and smoke, and her eyes didn't blink much. She looked like a woman who'd fought for her soul and was still waiting to see if she'd earned it. Colt stepped out beside her, coffee in hand, shotgun finally resting by the door, unused now but still close, just in case. "They won't be back," he said quietly. She nodded, but her voice cracked. "You don't know that. I know they ain't stupid. They saw what we're willing to do. That was their warning." He looked over at her. "Next time we won't give one." Mara managed a breath that sounded like it almost laughed. Then she looked up at him, eyes softer than they'd been in days. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not closing the stall door." 2 days passed. No calls, no trucks, no shadows on the ridge. Ray stayed a while longer, helped repair some of the busted fencing, then shook Colt's hand with a nod and a grin. "She's tougher than you, brother," he said on his way out. "Don't screw it up." That night the wind carried a different kind of quiet. Not the one that comes before danger, but the kind that comes after a storm spent itself. Colt found Mara by the fire pit, barefoot in the grass, wrapped in an old flannel and staring up at the stars like they owed her something. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked when she heard him approach. "Sometimes," he said, settling down beside her in the grass, "but never for long. This land's got its hooks in me." "What if I left?" He looked at her sharp. "You thinking about it?" But I want to know if you'd stop me." Colt leaned back, hands behind his head. "I'd ask you why. I'd want to understand. But no, I wouldn't chain you here. You've had enough of that." She looked at him for a long time. "What if I stayed?" "That your choice?" She nodded. "Yeah, it is." He sat up slowly, facing her full on. "This ain't some fairy tale, Mara. You stay, we're gonna fight sometimes. I'll piss you off. You'll shut down. We're both too damn stubborn for this to be easy." "I don't need easy," she said. "I just need real." He reached over, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, fingertips slow and tender, like he still wasn't sure he was allowed. "And I need you," he said. That night they didn't rush anything. There wasn't urgency or lust or fire sparked in fear. There was just time and trust. When Colt kissed her, it wasn't a claiming. It was a question. And when she kissed him back, it was an answer. They undressed slow, not like in movies, not perfect or practiced, just real. A man and a woman who had come through hell and still found each other worth touching. They didn't make love because they were trying to forget the world. They did it because, for the first time in a long time, neither of them wanted to run from it anymore. Morning came with the smell of rain in the distance and the sound of hooves in the pasture. The air was lighter now, like the land itself had exhaled. Colt stood shirtless on the porch, coffee in hand again, watching Mara move across the field with the horses, barefoot, smiling, hair whipping in the wind. She was talking to one of the mares like it understood her, and maybe it did. The world just seemed to bend a little easier around her now. She turned and caught him watching. He raised the mug. "You keep making me stare like that, I'm going to forget how fences work." She laughed, full and true. Then walked back toward him, slow and sure. "Do you ever think about the first time we met?" she asked when she reached him. "Every day," he said. "Hard to forget the first time you find a woman tied up in a stall." She rolled her eyes. "You make it sound romantic." "Nah," he said, grin spreading. "That part came later." She leaned in, pressed her forehead to his chest. "I still dream about it sometimes," she said. "That moment, your face, the door swinging open." He wrapped his arms around her, voice low against her hair. "That door should have stayed shut," he murmured. "Would have been simpler." "But not better," she whispered. "No," he said, closing his eyes. "Not better." And that was the truth of it. Sometimes the door that should have stayed shut leads you straight into the fire. But sometimes it leads you home. If this story grabbed hold of your heart the way it did ours, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next SaddleHorn story.